All right, guys, welcome back to Crossman Productions. Man, we have a just another great show for you. Um, you know, one of the things that I've been wanting to do is get more athletes on the show. We get a chance to sit down with a lot of just awesome people. We've done a couple of interviews with a bunch of great actors, but one of the things I really like to do is bring in some of these, bring in some athletes and have them share their journey as well. Um, I talked to Venus Monique um, a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me that she had a friend that she wanted me to meet. She's like, got a friend, his name's Ron Waterman, and you got to hear his story. You got to get him on the show. You got to hear his story. So yeah, I reached out to Ron, and Ron agreed to be on the show, and I'm excited to have him here. I'm excited to hear about his journey, and just looking at some of the stuff that this guy's done. It's crazy. He's been a UFC fighter, was in the WWE. He's a firefighter, paramedic, uh, actor. He's a part of a motivation group called Team Impact. So this guy has just been crazy busy. As a matter of fact, before he got on, he just got home from work, and then worked on a farm before he got here. It's not even it's 10 o'clock in my time, so he's already had a full day. So yeah, so we're gonna get to know him, bring him in. So I'm excited. Remember, hit the subscribe, like, comment, share. When you get a chance, obviously I want you to go see the new website we have, Crossman Productions. Check out the merch there. Um, and what we do now is I'm going to go ahead and bring in Ron. What's up, brother?
How you doing, Parks? Glad to be here, buddy.
Thank you. Thanks so much for being on the show. I had the opportunity to meet Venus about a couple of weeks ago and got to interview her. And uh, she's such an awesome person,
Yes, she
And
is.
one of the cool things I like about meeting people on the show is they introduce me to other awesome people too. So, she was like, "Hey, I want you to meet Ron." I think you might have been the first person she actually recommended. Um,
Really?
yeah, she was like, "You got to meet, my friend Ron." Um, and so she hooked us up to Messenger, and I was able to get you on the show. So I'm excited about you being here. I'm excited about hearing your journey.
Well, thanks, Park. It's always good to share. It's great to network, and Venus is a great person. So it's when she recommends somebody, I know it's coming from a good heart.
Right. So let's go ahead and kick this off. Kind of introduce yourself and let our audience know kind of where you were born and raised, and what was life like for Ron H2O Waterman growing up.
Well, it wasn't always easy in this. If you look at some of my accolades, you think, wow, this guy had the a great life, and it was just everything was just handed to him, and it worked out perfect. But it's been a long journey, and there's been a lot of different chapters of my life. I woke up. I was brought up in a split home. My parents divorced when I was 12, so like any kid, that takes a toll on them.
Right.
I was a short little chubby kid that didn't learn very fast. I learned that real quick in school that I wasn't like the rest of the kids. It took me longer to understand things. So
Right.
I got I got picked on and teased a lot as a young kid. But I think one of the things that I benefited from that was that I became a real hard worker because I knew I was going to have to do more to stay caught up with the rest of the class.
Right.
So I developed this work ethic and just started to work really hard. And that when I got to junior high school, that same work ethic carried right over to my sports. That's kind of what kept me involved in school, and it's just probably kept me in school.
Right.
But tough football practices. I was the kid that would stay out on the field for the 20 minutes after football was over and everybody went to the locker rooms. I'd be
Wow.
out there running sprints by myself, trying to get ahead. After football came wrestling season, and then we'd have these brutal practices. And after practice was over, I'd head to the staircase and run stairs for the next 20
Wow.
minutes. And
Wow.
I was never a straight A student, but
Right.
I had worked hard enough on that wrestling mat, spent enough time getting extra help from teachers, parents, tutors, whatever it took, that I actually earned a scholarship to go on to a Division II school. Was a college wrestler, got a scholarship for 4 years, wrestled, graduated, and then went back to school again after I got a teaching position. I was actually a high school art teacher, if you can believe that or not. No, not many people picture me as a high school art teacher, but
Right.
it was a lot of fun. And I went back, got a master's degree a couple of years later. I continued to train and work out because I had a lot of physical goals that I wanted to reach in my life as well.
Right.
And my wrestling team, actually, after a practice one night, they challenged me to enter this local mixed martial arts competition in Denver, Colorado.
Right.
Boss Fruit Invitational. And mixed martial arts were kind of getting big at that time and kind of exploding, and all these wrestlers were doing really well. And I was a top ranked college wrestler. So I took him up on that challenge and traveled down and fought 3 fights in one night, won them all in under 20 seconds. And sure enough, I was invited right to the next UFC. So fought in UFC 20, 21, 22, all the way up to 25. Put in a video game and all these great worldly achievements, started to just, everything was just started to fall in place. And was shortly after that I got introduced to the WWE, and they flew me out to Stamford, Connecticut, sat in a big boardroom with Jim Ross and McMahon and all these people, and they offered me a 4-year developmental contract to compete in the WWE. 6 months later, I'm, in Madison Square Gardens wrestling guys like I was tag team partners with Brock Lesnar, wrestling with Randy Orton, and all these big names that you see out there today.
Right.
Got to travel with them for a couple of years. And then they didn't have another spot for me, so my career got kind of cut short after 2 years of that. But, it took such a toll on my family. I had 2 young boys at the time. They tell you, you're going to get home, every week after the show, but you end up going to do, autograph signings and appearances here and there. And I was getting home maybe 2 or 3 times a month. So it was just super hard on my family. So it wasn't a real big disappointment when that career came to an end. And immediately I started, one of the guys I traveled with in WWE, his name was Rico Constantino. He was a WWE wrestler as well. And he introduced me to a team called Team Impact Ministries, because he used to travel with a group called the Power Team back in the day.
Right. Yeah.
He says, well, these are the guys you have to call. So I sent him actually an email, told him who I was and introduced myself. They flew me out for the next week to Dallas, Texas, interviewed me, and sent me out on the road traveling with a great group of Christian athletes that do feats of strength. And then they get to share their testimonies, do a message of salvation. They do all these crazy feats of strength, like putting baseball bats over their legs, blowing up hot water bottles,
ripping those big phone books.
Big phone books, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I was really getting into, but it was such a change from traveling around with guys in the WWE to traveling around with these godly Christian men that were also professional athletes, a lot of NFL football players, bodybuilders, powerlifters, world strongman competitors.
Right.
So I knew this is where God's path was for me, is he wanted me traveling with these guys. I'd become a Christian kind of during that period where I was wrestling and fighting.
Right.
And God, I think, opened that door for me to compete and get some exposure and create a platform for me. So when I did go out with Team Impact Ministries and this strength ministry all over the world, I had already had a little bit of a reputation and a following, and kids, were attracted to that and wanted to see more. And then we could share the gospel and share our stories and win people to Jesus. So at the time when this was all happening, I got cut from the WWE. I didn't really understand why. I was, a hard worker, doing everything right, I thought. And but looking back now, I could see God's plan for me, and it was to do his work full time. So it's been a huge blessing. I've been traveling with these guys now for 25 years, and I travel with several different strength teams now. I've been all over the world. I still continue to go out probably once a month to different towns, and I'm headed to over to Texas actually next week to do a program. So
we're at in Texas.
it's just right outside of Houston. I can't even remember the name of the little town.
Okay. Yeah. So first, I'm going to go back when you were younger. Okay, when you were playing football.
Yep.
You know, you were one of the people who that stayed, and obviously you were very passionate about sports. What kind of drew you to do that? I mean, motivated you to stay and just like want to excel so much in that sport. So what made you kind of do that?
I think it's just something that's been ingrained in me since a little kid that, whatever I do, I want to be good at.
Right.
And in school, I was always the kid that was, not the best in the classroom. And so when I started competing in sports, I figured out, this is something that I can excel in. Because the harder I work at this, the better I'm going to become. So I would work extremely hard and put all my effort into it. And then I started to see a little bit of success. So when you start to get a little bit of recognition through, sports and stuff like that, it feeds you to do even more and to be even better.
Right.
And then that led in wrestling was kind of more, I played football all the way through high school, but wrestling was really because it was an individual sport. And, I was in charge of my own destiny. I don't have to rely on really anybody else to be good. So I just worked extremely hard and became a top wrestler in the state of Colorado, and then went on to college and ended up being one of the best wrestlers in the nation after 4 years.
Wow. That's an incredible story. I mean, you go in, and first of all, you're sitting as an art teacher,
Right.
And it's funny how God works, because sometimes we'll pick a career and we'll be like, okay, this is where my life is, whatever, and then just out of nowhere, God just like boom brings you, brings an opportunity.
That's right.
And then He ends up taking us places that we never thought we would be able to go. So if we have going from an art teacher, into the UFC, that's huge. That's a huge change of pace. So what was that like? Let's talk about when you went into the UFC and you stood in the ring for the first time. What brings that experience? What was that like?
It was all pretty surreal just because it happened so fast for me.
Right.
I've got a boy that's fighting now and he's got an undefeated record, but it's so much harder today to get into the UFC than it was, back in '99 when I did it, just because there's not nearly as many people. But, winning those 3 fights in one night, and I was pretty much just a pure wrestler at the time. I didn't even have my black belt in jiu-jitsu at that time, and hadn't trained on my feet stand-up boxing game very much, or kickboxing or Muay Thai. So I was pretty much just a straight wrestler, and I would go in there and there was nobody I couldn't take down. There was, a big, strong dude, and I would just ground and pound him. But I dominated the 3 people in that first competition that I was in, and there was a couple of guys that were former UFC fighters that were in there. So I was like,
wow,
I can do this.
Right.
So I had my very first UFC fight and ended up finishing that one in 20 seconds as well. And then everything just kind of exploded from there. I started getting more offers and fights where, every UFC I was on the next card, and things just started to happen real fast for me. But it's a pretty surreal experience, getting to walk out and being on national television in front of thousands and thousands of people. But being an athlete and being a wrestler at a high level, you're used to that pressure, and that you can't let adrenaline get into your system because that'll zap all your energy. Energy. So I was one of those guys that trained real hard, and I was real confident in my abilities and what I had to give out there, and just stuck with it, and it paid off for me. I mean, back then I could be a great wrestler and still be competitive and win.
Wow. So, and then you went from UFC into the WWE. And be able to be in the ring with people like Randy Orton and Brock Lesnar. That guy's a beast. Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, Brock is actually a good friend of mine. He was just out at the house a couple months ago. His daughter was going to CSU up here in Colorado, so when he brought her up to school, he came by and we had dinner together. Brought his family out, and I still get to talk to Brock quite often.
That's awesome, man. And that dude's just built. It's like just a brick house, man.
He's a crazy athlete. I mean, back when I was wrestling with him, he was probably 300 pounds, and he could just stand in one spot and do a standing backflip and land right back on his feet. At 300 pounds, I mean, unheard of. He'd jump up on a pull-up bar and he'd do 40 pull-ups and do this 300 pounds. That's unheard of,
Right. That's crazy.
He grew up on a farm and just a hard worker, so we had a lot of things in common, and we ended up being roommates back in OVW. It was kind of like the training camp for the WWE. You have to spend some time, learning how to do everything. And it was a crazy group of guys I was with out there. I was with Randy Orton, Dave Bautista, Brock, John Cena. So we had like 7 or 8 of us, and those guys are all, big names now.
Right.
But I just felt kind of like a big fish in a small pond, out there. Right. At home, and then you get out there and you see these just monsters, and it's a different world. But it was a lot of fun. It was a fun chapter.
That's crazy. So was there a time, like when you were going through this, and you're like, it's, this is like something that, like just where you were almost stunned. You're like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe I'm at this place at this moment. Is there a time that that's happened?
I think I had a lot of those moments, especially when I got called up to the main traveling roster in WWE, and I walk into the locker room, and there's Dave, The Rock, and you see Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker, and I get to see these guys. I'm standing right next to them in the locker room getting ready for my matches, and
wow,
go and shake their hand, and it's just another day, another day of the job for those guys. But it was kind of surreal taking that step to that next level. It was pretty cool.
Man, I can imagine. I'm a huge WWE fan, so
are you?
Yeah. So be able to I can imagine being in a room with those guys. Yeah. And then that sport is such a tough sport, anyways.
It really is. People don't understand the physical aspect that goes into that. They think that it's all staged, but man, I got hurt more wrestling for those 2 years than I did in mixed martial arts, just because you're relying on your partners, your opponents sometimes to keep you safe, and that doesn't always happen.
Right. I just had Bishop Stevens on a couple of weeks ago, and Bishop was in WWE, and he said that he's like, a lot of people think it's fake, and he's like, it's not fake. It's scripted, but it's not fake. It's
exactly.
Like, gravity is still gravity. A chair is still a chair.
Yeah, it still hurts. And there's no time off, Most sports, football players, they have a season. Baseball players have a season.
Right.
And in WWE, I mean, you're just gone. I mean, every single week you're doing 3 matches, and it's week after week after week. And, you get a little owie on your foot, you don't get the next day off.
Right.
So, I can see how these guys would get, hooked on painkillers and some of the things that went on in the industry just because they're trying to survive. And, Vince was a businessman. You're out there the next night regardless. So,
right. I just got
pain and with pain.
Yeah. I just got to watching the documentary for Undertaker.
Yeah.
And all the stuff that he had, that he'd gone through, and all the surgeries, and the toll that it actually took on his body, and I'm sure that happens to a lot of them.
Yeah.
So man, I couldn't do it. I know that I couldn't do it. I mean, what these guys do, you guys are a special breed. To get out there and do that. And then so now you're part of a group called Team Impact. Now I remember the Power Team. Growing up, I've seen the Power Team come to our church and do their thing, and that's, if you guys haven't seen groups like Power Team or Team Impact, definitely go check them out. It's a lot of fun to watch. And then again, you know, um, you know, once they come in and they do their thing, they also have a positive message, that they share with you. So, but and that's something that when you're growing up that you can remember forever because these guys are, it's like um, some of the things that they came in and did, like you're talking about blowing up the water bottles and um, I remember them tearing up the phone books, breaking handcuffs, and running through blocks of ice and
Yeah, we still do all that same crazy stuff.
right. So you said you have one coming up in Texas. We're gonna talk about that too, and we'll put a link up where people can actually come see you guys. So what was that like? So you left the WWE. You went into um, Team Impact. What was that first appearance like in Team Impact for you?
Um, that was another thing that, I saw these guys doing all these feats of strength, and you think you have all this time to train and all this instruction how to do these things. And
Right.
I remember the very first one I went out on, they handed me a baseball bat and said, yeah, just put this on your leg, push down real hard and snap it. And then I did that the first night. So then they put two baseball bats together, taped them together and said, okay, here's two baseball bats. I want you to do this. And then we go up and they hand me this 300-pound log that they saw these little handles into.
Right.
And they tell you that, we need you to take this and lift it over your head. And I didn't practice anything like this, it's just
right.
raw strength pretty much, and ripping telephone books. And that was the kind of the easy part of the whole performance. But when you actually have to stand in front of large groups of people and share your testimony and what God's done in your life, that's where I really got the reward and the satisfaction from that.
Right.
And I felt like I was, I'm doing God's work now, and I'm getting to share stories, trying to win other people, to Christ. And that's really what it's all about for me.
Right. That's awesome too, because, the impact, like, so, you got the beginning part where you're doing, all the feats,
Yeah.
But it's that last part, the first part grabs the attention of the young people. And it gives you that opportunity to share, your story and your testimony. And I've seen the impact that makes on young people. And the thing is that people don't realize is that impact lasts, that young person's entire life. They will remember that stuff, and it changes them. So I'm one of those kids. You know what I mean?
All right.
Yeah. So, every time the Power Team came in, we're like, all right, we're there. We got to go see them.
Yeah. The cool thing about those programs, Parks, is when we go into a town to do a performance at that church, we're there from anywhere from 3 to 5 days typically. And during the day, we would go to these schools and we do school programs where you can't share your faith in the schools, but we would do a biblically based message. We would talk about drugs, alcohol, peer pressure, bullying, and we cover a wide variety of things. But at the end of that performance, we would say, hey, you can see a lot more than this if you come out, the next 3 nights at 7:00. It's a free performance. And that's when we get to share our testimony. So the church is winning because they're getting all these new kids and families that are coming into their church.
Right.
They accept Christ as their savior, and now they're plugging into the church, and the church is growing. So it's a really cool program.
Right. And we need programs like that, that to do exactly what you're talking about, going into the schools. These schools need that more now than ever.
Absolutely.
For groups like that to go in and talk to these kids and get them into the church. We should, as a church, we should have more programs that we're involved in to send into the schools to get these kids.
It's kind of sad, when we would go overseas and do programs in South Africa or India, we would go into these schools and they would tell us to share our faith in the schools when we're in other countries. And we would do our testimonies, we would share salvation right there in the schools. I remember one school in South Africa that I did an altar response right at the end of the program. And we had probably 90% of the kids in that school, administrators, teachers, all come forward and accept Christ right there in the school program.
Wow.
It was just amazing. But then you come back to the States and, we've been asked to turn our T-shirts inside out because there's a scripture on it, or, it's just so backwards now when we took church out of the schools.
Yeah. And you're seeing the impact of that now more so, I guess, than, than before. I mean, you could see the further we're getting away from God, you can see, the impact that it's having, not only on the schools, but just, on society in general, because now these kids are graduating, and becoming adults, and, and then they want to take God out of everything. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They want to take them out of the work, take them out of, they want to shut down, the churches, and, but we definitely need more programs and more people who are willing to be bold enough to go in, and,
Yeah, right.
So let me ask you this: through all this, the things that you've done, what do you think has been the biggest lesson that you've learned?
When I first got into the UFC and the WWE, and I started to, get a little bit of a fan base, I ended up writing a book a few years ago called "Tapped Out by Jesus: From the Cage to the Cross."
Wow.
And I say in that book that I found myself living for the 3 G's for 32 years of my life: gold, glory, and girls. And I thought that, those three things would make me happy in life. And I just was kind of caught up in that materialistic part of life where, if I just had a bigger house, I just had a nicer car. If I just had this, if I just had that, I would be happy.
Right.
But I was so caught up in the world that it was, I could just see my life spiraling down because you're never fulfilled. You're never happy. It's impossible to say no to the things of the world until you first said yes to Christ in your life. And I found that so true for me, just getting caught up in all this stuff and never being happy. And, no matter what I achieved or, the next goal that I hit, I'd be happy for a short period of time and then I would be empty again. And
Right.
It wasn't until 32 years old and my dad invited me back to the church again, that I'd been turning him down for years. And I went to that church service and the pastor, man, just spoke to my heart. I was certain my dad told him everything about me and everything I needed to hear because, man, that pastor just hit on everything. And at the end of that service, I knew God was talking to me and it was my time to quit running and accept Christ as my savior. And I stood up in front of 500 people that day in a church service and was the first one to walk down to the front and accept Jesus into my life. And that was a day that changed my life forever.
Wow. Man, it's just, it's incredible too, because, all the stuff that you've been a part of and doing, like you said, a lot of times we do it for ourselves, and then God has to remind us why He put us here. You know what I mean?
Right.
He has to remind us, and that's a humbling experience too. So once you felt like God called you, and you got saved, how did it kind of transform the things that you were doing?
It kind of put a new perspective on my life. I knew then, what my purpose was, and
Right.
It wasn't about going out and getting more fame, making more money, being more popular, getting women. That wasn't what I was put on this earth for. It was,
Right.
and it just redirected my thoughts completely after that day that I accepted Christ in my life. I got plugged into my church, got involved in Bible studies, started getting accountability partners, just all the things that I needed to be successful. And, I still continued to fight. I went over to Japan and fought in the Pride Fighting Championships over there for many years, and came back to the States and won the first WEC super heavyweight belt that has ever been won. So I continued to fight for probably the next 10 years after I became a Christian, but just such a different mental attitude that I had, I think, going into everything. I knew God was in my corner, and, I had chances on national television to share scripture and to let people know that I was a believer, and that this is why I was here. And that's, God gave me the abilities to compete like I did. And, he deserves the credit. It's not about me. It's nothing that I did. So.
Wow. So now you're a firefighter and a paramedic. So how did that kind of evolve?
It's kind of funny. I was, my boy was a senior in high school, and I was looking for different career opportunities for him. And I thought, man, he'd be a great firefighter. So I started pulling some connections and talking to some people, and met with a few people. And I thought, you know what, at this point I was still traveling, with the ministry. I started a real estate company, but I was like, man, this sounds like all fun. I think I'm going to try this. So I went to school and got a paramedic degree, and did all my firefighting classes, and got hired on by a company in the first year. And I had already, I was 43 years old. That's old for a firefighter to start in the business. So, but it was great. It's really a service industry where, you're helping people on their worst days and trying to get through things. And there's so many times in the back of the ambulance where I'm pulling somebody in, and I can sit and pray for them and pray with them. And it's a neat opportunity, and it's just a different environment, but it still gives me an opportunity to share Christ. And it's something I really enjoy. I love the medicine part of it and helping people, and it's been a lot of fun.
Wow. And, that's such a big leap, from being a UFC fighter. So I mean, look at you. I'm looking at your career. So you started off as a art teacher.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then God brings you, and you become a UFC fighter, and you're, and a WWE wrestler. And then God's like, okay, we're not done yet. We're going to do something completely different. We're going to put you in, make you a firefighter and a paramedic. That's a crazy journey.
Yeah, it's a lot of different chapters of your life, but each one of them brings new opportunities, and now I'm dipping my toes into the acting business, and that's been a lot of fun, and been to several Christian acting conferences, which have been amazing. Just to meet the people in that industry, and to see, that's something that I would really enjoy. So we'll see where the Lord takes that opportunity in my life. So
cool. Have you had a chance to be in a film yet, or are you just doing the?
I've actually signed for 3 different films that I'm the lead in 2 of them. That they're just in the funding process right now. But I've done several commercials. I've done a car commercial out here in Colorado, and a couple other small things. So we'll see where God takes it.
Cool. I'd love to see you in some films.
It'd be fun.
Yeah, and you're connected to the right people. You got Venus. What Venus is doing over there, here in Texas, with Vindication. I mean, that's
right.
That's a great show. I actually just got my wife to watch it yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to season 3. I'm so excited about season 3.
Yeah, I auditioned for a role in that one, actually. So we'll
really?
See. Yeah.
All right, Jerry. So you got to get Ron in the show.
Yeah, right.
So season 4, the casting for season 4 now. So
yeah,
they just released season 3. Yeah, it's funny because I know a lot of people that's on the show, and they all know what happens in season 3, but nobody can tell me what.
Right. Yeah. Hush, hush.
Right. So I have to wait all the way till September to find out. But I'm excited for that show and what they're doing. I just interviewed Cameron Arnett.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Cameron's a great guy. Yep.
Yeah. So he's doing some amazing stuff too. But yeah, so Let me ask you this: so somebody who's trying to get into, let's say, into the UFC or wrestling, what kind of advice would you give them?
Oh, my boy is one of them right now. He's 5-0 on the amateur level, and he's got his first pro fight coming up in the next couple of months. But it's one of those things where obviously you have to train super hard. It's hard to even have a job these days and compete and get to the level that you need to be at without training full time every single day and having a camp set up, getting ready for your fights. And it's just such a big uh, it's such a big ordeal today compared to what it was when I was fighting and doing what I did.
Right.
It takes a lot of dedication, mentally, physically, and I couldn't have done it without the spiritual aspect and having Christ as the first person in my life
Right.
to lean back on, because there's hard times, injuries occur, practice is just brutal. It beats you down every day, but if you've got a prior background in like wrestling or boxing and stuff like that, it's going to certainly help your career in the sport. But getting a good team behind you and finding a good camp and a good dojo to train in
Right.
is super important, and having the right people behind you.
Well, so one of the things you mentioned is your faith in God. You know, just hearing some of the stories of some of these guys that's been part of it, um, and the stuff that they've gone through. Um, Especially, I don't know how they do it without God, honestly.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't either. I don't either.
So going back to like Undertaker's story, stuff that he went through. Um, I know that I saw somewhere that he got saved too.
I just saw that on the internet as well. I heard a little testimony that he gave. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, I would love to have Undertaker on and talk about that too. He just retired. I think he's in Austin now. He retired.
Yeah, I think he is down in Texas. I think that's also where Steve Austin lives down there.
Yeah, yeah. Steve's from this area.
Is he?
Yeah, he's been around. So I'm pretty close to Dallas. So Steve's been he's known for being around all this area. Yeah, we're glad to have Undertaker back. In Austin, but yeah, just hearing the stories of the things that these guys have gone through. Yeah, I just can't. I can't imagine them having to go through that stuff. Not having God, in their life, because it just seems like that stuff is so brutal, and just the toll that it takes on your body and on you mentally.
Yeah, and that's what the part that most people don't realize is the mental aspect, and it's truly a life of when you get to that level in WWE. I mean, it's like a famous rock star. You've got all these addictions and stuff that you're trying to deal with, and you've got groupies that are showing up at your door at 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's just so many other aspects of the thing that you don't realize that the devil works on you pretty hard. So if you don't have a strong faith, man, it's hard to survive.
Right. So, man, um, so let's talk about some of the things that you've currently done, and some of the things that you have projects that you have coming up.
So right now I've got, like I said, I've got those 3 scripts. I'm just waiting for those to fund, so that'll be cool for my acting career.
Right.
I've got several different dates, and I just kind of stick them on my calendar as they come in to travel with these different strength teams. I travel with one team called Power One out of Texas. It's real similar to Team Impact. I've got a Team Impact event, like I was telling you. I've got one I know in Kansas. I think I leave at the end of next week for that one. I fly into Wichita, and I think it's an hour and a half drive from there to a small town where I'm doing an event. And then we've got another one coming up in Texas fairly soon. And then I go back to North Carolina a couple months, and I've got a couple events over in North Carolina.
Cool. I think you mentioned too that you wrote a book, Tapped Out.
Tapped Out by Jesus, From the Cage to the Cross. And you can get that on my website, ronwaterman.com, or I think that you can even find it on Amazon.
Cool. So, what we'll do is I'll put you send me the links to the different things,
Absolutely.
the events, and then for the book, and we'll put that in the detail section of the video.
That would be.
Because I would love to see you guys having a huge turnout for some of these events that you guys are doing. Like I said, I used to go to them as a kid, and I know the impact that they have. And so if anybody's in these areas, they definitely want to go see. So I want to put that information up for you.
That'd be great. I'd appreciate that, Parks.
So, and if you're in our area, you got to let me know so I can come see you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, that'd be great.
So now somebody's trying to, wants to follow your career and some of the things that you're doing. What's the best way for them to do that?
I try to keep my website fairly posted, and that's just ronwaterman.com. And I put, I've got a lot of different areas on there. I've got, all my WWE, UFC stuff. I've got my ministry stuff that I also do on there. I've got a part of that is a real estate page. I own a real estate company now. But I just try to keep every couple of months, I put updates on there and let people know where I'm going to be and what I'm doing. And I've got a Facebook and an Instagram account you can also follow.
Cool. I want to ask you this too. If there's a church out there who wants to have one of the group, your power teams come in, how do they go about doing that?
Contacting me directly, and I can put them in front of the right person depending on where they're at in the United States. Some teams are closer than others, but it's a pretty simple process, and it doesn't cost the church a lot of money, which is what most churches are like. We're pretty tight on our budget right now.
Right.
We don't charge the church to come in as a group. We pay, just for some of our airline stuff and putting us up in a hotel for the 3 to 5 days, and feeding us, which is kind of expensive sometimes. But other than that, you pay for the materials, and then we get a donation from the crowd every night, a love offering, and that's what funds us for the event. So, and like I was telling you, I mean, you get people that would never step inside of a church to watch a pastor or even a Christian singer, but they'll come to watch these big, strong guys do these crazy feats of strength.
Right.
And then they're put in front of Jesus for the first time. And many give their lives to Jesus through our programs. And it's a great event. And then, they got to get plugged into the church. So we talk to them afterwards at the end of the night about, getting plugged in and following up with the believer's baptism and becoming a part of that church, and the church grows. It's just a win-win for everybody.
Cool. So, if you have a church, this is actually a perfect time to have these teams out there because, these kids are out on spring break. So this is a great time. Well, I guess you guys, it's even better when they're in school because then you guys get to go to the school too and talk to them.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So, I'm trying to think it out, So, but what the thing is that you definitely reach out to these guys. It's worth, bringing them in, and the impact that they make on the community is immeasurable. So definitely, if you guys are considering, something like this for your church, reach out to Ron and get him, get with him and get this in your church. And right now too, with our youth going through all the stuff they're going through, they really need programs like this out there to reach them. And that's our job as Christians anyways. We should be going out there and getting these kids to get them in the church. So this is a great way to do that. So I wanted to thank you, Ron, so much for being on the show. It was, a lot of fun getting to know you, man.
Yeah, it's great to know you too, buddy. I always appreciate the opportunity to share my story, and it was great to be on your program, buddy.
Well, cool. So as these films start developing, let me know. And I'd love to have you back on the show.
Absolutely, I would love it too.
Cool. All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Taking some time out of your Saturday morning and joining us. It was a lot of fun to get to know Ron and all the things that he's working on and things that he's accomplished. So until next week, remember you're uniquely designed with purpose, and
Amen.
always keep moving forward. Peace.
God bless you, brother.